Hello, everyone. I'm Ashley Zahorian. I am the director and co-showrunner of the new show, FantomWorks Off Grid. And I worked on the original series as a director, a story producer, field producer, and started as a sound mixer. And I just wanted to talk with Dan about a little bit about why FantomWorks even started, why he did a show once it was started, why he quit the show, and why we're doing it again. And I get a lot of the same questions within CMAX and having been part of the original show. Let's start with the very beginning. Why did you start a car restoration company?
Okay, well, I'm going to divide that into two questions if I can. Why start a company, period? And then why choose car restoration? So the desire to start a company. I was in the military for 24 years. I actually think it's an obligation, as an American. You get these freedoms, you live in the greatest country in the world, give back. And so for me, it was important. I started out as enlisted as an E1. My first paycheck I still have for a month was $347, and no, that was not in the 1800s. And so it was never about the money. It was about sort of what it meant on the inside. And so when I retired, it was sort of a natural progression, right? I'm not going to tell you that service to your country and owning a small business is exactly the same. But Ashley, you own a small business now, right?
Right.
Do you think you are helping the economy and people by employing them and giving them useful, purposeful things to do?
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's so much of why we do it.
Okay. So do you think that Brigitte and Benicia would be as happy working at a department store or doing something else as they are behind a camera and writing story?
No, absolutely not.
That's why I started a company, because I thought it's a way to do that thing yourself. Do you think that you can do film and production better than the last person you worked for that was doing film and production?
Yes.
Okay, so it's all those things, right? There's so many reasons, and that's why I decided to start a business. With respect to why a car restoration business, number one, you do what you love. And one of the things that I love is not just creating something with my hands, but what about the fact that you can rebuild something with your hands? And so for me, as a kid, my first time ever, that I was exposed to this, I was about 9 years old. And my mom took her carpet shampooer and she threw it in the garbage. And I remember looking at it, and it was a complete carpet shampooer, and it looked like it was practically new. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "It doesn't work." So I said, "You mind if I try?" She said, "It's in the garbage. I don't care what you do." So, I mean, I'm 9 years old, and I know what a screwdriver is and a pair of pliers is. So I just pulled the thing apart and sort of looked at it. Now, I was very fortunate that what was wrong with it was a switch on the inside. A joint had become disconnected. And so I looked at all this and found this connector and put it back together and, without electrocuting myself, plugged it into the wall, sort of partially disassembled, and I pressed the trigger, and lo and behold, the carpet shampooer is working. And so I put all the screws back in it, and I handed it to my mom, and she didn't really understand how this had happened. And to me, it was just pure logic. I couldn't stand a carpet shampooer being thrown in the garbage because it's going into a landfill. And I saw all of this waste, and waste has always bothered me. I mean, waste of anything, right? I think you feel sort of the same way. I mean, you're not a wasteful individual.
Right. I mean, my parents both grew up on dairy farms, so they learned how to conserve at a very early age because everything was needed and needed to be saved.
Yeah.
And my dad raised chickens in elementary school. He was the chicken champ of New York State. As a kid, I thought that meant he won races with chickens on his shoulders because of a photo from the 4-H newspaper clipping. But he did such a good job raising chickens and, of course, feeding them the farm scraps. He wasn't just purchasing food for them. That saving up from raising chickens in elementary school was how he paid his first deposit on the first house he and my mom got in Norfolk after he got his PhD in punch card computing.
That is such a great success story, and at the same time, such a simple story. I'm just going to go back to dairy cows. And I know everybody's going to say, well, no kidding, I know that. But until you actually think about it, it doesn't really register in your head. I have dairy cows, and ultimately dairy cows have this ability to do pure magic. They can take grass, something that we mow and we hate mowing, and then we grab the clippings up maybe and we throw them in the trash and we fill up a landfill. A dairy cow takes what goes in a landfill and turns it into milk. And then they can have little baby cows that can be dinner. And so the logic of taking grass clippings and waste and turning it into milkshakes and cheese and butter and steaks, when you actually start thinking about it, it makes you wonder, how could I not do this? And so just getting back to carpet shampooers and FantomWorks, it's the same thing. When they designed a car, they designed it with not only designed obsolescence, but also with sort of a very finite life. You figure the cars of the 50s actually had about a 5-year service life. The cars of the 60s got up to about 7.5. And we didn't really see a 10-year design life until, you could argue, somewhere in the 70s, okay? And so it's the same thing as a carpet shampooer. You take a 67 Camaro, this thing that it's this art form, and ultimately most of them were thrown away when they were between 5 and 10 years old. And they were crushed, and don't get me wrong, I understand that they were melted down and turned into Yugos and scooters, but they designed all this art. And here we take it and we drive it for a few years and throw it in the trash. And that bothered me. It always bothered me. And so building cars is just a logical extension to taking something and not throwing it away. Let's see what we can do about making that Camaro, that Mustang, that Challenger, instead of lasting 5 to 7 years, let's make it last 50 years or 80 years and pass it on and allow our descendants to see what our ancestors created. And so that's why I did FantomWorks. And let me tell you the thing that you don't want to build a car company for, and that's if you want to make money. Margins on building cars, our average margins have never been better than about 2.5%. And that's a pretty low profit margin.
Right.
And so if you build cars because you want to make money, I'll just tell you, you're better off doing almost anything else. But if you have a passion to take garbage, a 10-year-old car, by many people's sort of definition, is garbage, right? You scrap it, you crush it, you turn it into whatever. So the passion to take something that's being thrown away and turn it back into an art form, that's not done for money. It's done because you have to.
So you built the company, and then how did you end up with a first TV show?
It's interesting, of course. When you build cars, everybody thinks that it's a cool thing to do. And then one day, a man walked in disguised as a client, as a customer, and we spent 4 hours talking about his very rare little car. And at the end, he said, "We have to do a show here." And I said, yeah, not going to happen. And he said, "No, you don't understand. I'm a producer, and I want to do a show here." Now, I didn't understand the world of production companies and networks and sponsors and affiliates and all this. So at the time, I figured he controlled the market. And he said, "We're going to do a show." And my immediate response was, it's one of those things where it's a little bit like, do you really want to go to the moon, right? Do you want to jump on the rocket? It's like, we all say we want to be an astronaut, but when you're staring at the rocket and going, is that really what I want to do? Do I really want to go into space for 6 months? And so I said, I appreciate it, but I don't want a show. And he goes, no, you don't understand. You have to do a show. And I said, nope, I'm not going to do a show. And so this went on for a little while, and he kept calling me, and I kept saying no. And that's when he finally said, "Here's what I'd like to do. How would you like to have me just shoot a commercial for you, just to market your company? And at the time, so this was now back in like 2011, roughly. And so he said, I will spend $30,000 to build a commercial. It'll be a 2 to 3 minute commercial. You can get it for free. And let me just see what happens if somebody wants it. And that's when he started explaining to me how production companies just build stuff hoping that a network will buy it. And so I said, sure. And he said, look, the reality is there's probably only a 1 in 100 chance it's going to get picked up. And I said, in that case, absolutely. Do the commercial. I'll take your free commercial. So he does the commercial and sends it off. And almost immediately, I get a phone call. And I answer, I think it was my wife, who actually answered the call. And she says, hey, there's some guy here from the Discovery Network. And I mean, this was only a couple of weeks after we finished shooting the promo. And he said, he identified himself. I'm the vice president of the network. And we would like to start filming a show at your company. And I was in a little bit of shock because I didn't actually think it was going to happen. And I said, really? And he goes, you need to understand something. He said, there are 11 people that select TV shows. And so we usually get 1,000 or 2,000 submissions a year, and we boil them down. We have a staff that boils them down to the top 50. And so all 11 of us get the top 50. And he said, after everyone went through all of the top 50, yours was the one chosen as number one by every person on the staff. He goes, we have to start shooting a show there. And that's at the point where logic gives out to emotion. And you go, well, man, if it's that good, maybe we should. And so that's how we started shooting a show.
But why? What did you like about the show?
I didn't want to do this for drama. I wanted to do it for truth, validity, transparency, and to show people what it really was like to build cars.
And I think you also got to show some more of the retaining things, bringing back their value for people, for their memories.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people love about the show, is that it's also about the people, not just the builds.
Well, I've got to give a lot of credit to the production crew that shot, you included. I mean, there was a lot of great people that worked on the show. There really was. Unfortunately, there were a few boneheads also that made, did you not want to run screaming from this place?
So I have a story I've never told you before. There was a period of about 6 months where my husband asked me, can you please not mention FantomWorks when you come home? Because our children are starting to use it as a swear word.
Really?
So we had about a 6-month blackout where...
I would like to say that isn't true, but I can absolutely believe that that's true.
He said it's just, you can't bring the stress home because they're picking up on it.
It was horrible. Now, let me just address the stress, because I think that's an important thing. Look, I don't know that many people will accuse me of being an overly nice guy, but I don't believe I'm a mean guy. I'm a very straightforward, in-your-face guy. And so during the show, the stress, I can't even tell you how crippling it was most days. I mean, I was suffering from 3 migraines a week. The migraines were lasting 24 hours a day. Half of what you saw me do in front of a camera during the 9 seasons of FantomWorks was with me facing horrid migraines. I mean, it was to the point where I was puking some days. And the stress, the light at the end of the tunnel for the TV show was, I was told every day, Dan, it's going to get better. You're going to get paid for this. There's going to be royalties. At the end of the 2nd year, my wife and I sat down and we were not counting all the intangibles, just what we had to borrow to make payroll. We were around $500,000 in debt, something like that, over the show.
So one of the things I picked up on while there was that really there were 3 companies running with 3 different objectives. The network is trying to make air dates. The production company is trying to film this stuff. You're trying to run a business with clients who want cars back, who are also learning how to milk the system, that there's a network pressuring you for air dates. And I think that's a lot of what we looked at with moving forward with a new show so that we're not repeating the same mistakes.
You've got a little boy. Imagine if, yeah, okay. Imagine if when you were 3 months pregnant, I gave you a contract and said, you will deliver your son in 30 days because the contract says you will deliver him in 30 days. What could you have done to deliver your son 30 days after your first trimester? Nothing, right?
Nothing that would be healthy or good for anyone involved.
There you go. So although it's physically possible, it would be a violation of morals, it would be a violation of health, it would be a violation of everything. And so I was at least able to get someone to say, okay, we won't give you 30 days to deliver the baby, but we'll give you 90 days. And it's like, okay, so I still have to deliver a premature baby. I just don't have to deliver it as premature. And that was really the thing that helped out a lot. It at least slowed the bleeding. I went from losing $250,000 a year to $110,000, $115,000, $130,000 a year. So I cut the losses in half, but the losses continued. And so what ultimately happened was my contract was to go for what ultimately ended up being 6 calendar years and 9 seasons. And the day we hit 6 calendar years and 9 seasons, literally the day I already had the letter prepared, I was a minimum of $1 million under, a maximum of about $4 million in the hole. And it just, the bleeding had never really stopped. And so that's why I quit.
I think for every business owner, you have to make that decision at some point. Like, do you keep going down a rabbit hole or do you do something radically different? And I think something a lot of people don't understand is how a show that you're not paying directly for the production of and is bringing in these clients who are swarming at the doors, and how did this still cost you money?
In terms of clients, I've got a question for you. Ashley, I'm going to give you a 40-person restaurant, okay? You got 40 seats. It's 10 tables with 4 chairs in each one. If before a TV show comes along, you have 40 people in 40 seats from basically the minute you open till the minute you close, can I do any better for you by advertising more for your restaurant?
Nope.
Not really, right? I mean,
you might be able to get a,
Oh, you'll get some celebrity out of it. You'll get some notoriety. But are you going to make any more money if you were already at capacity?
Nope.
Okay.
Maybe some T-shirts.
Exactly. Maybe someone will give you something cool, right? They'll write you nice letters. So we had that restaurant. Before the show came out, we were full. We had every employee working every day on cars. So when the show came out, imagine now your 40-person restaurant has 300 people in line trying to get into your 40-person restaurant. Do you think those 300 people in line are going to be happy?
Nope. They're going to send a lot of hate mail and write nice, lovely comments.
Yeah, exactly. This restaurant sucks. I stood in line for 3 hours waiting to get in. They're going to throw eggs at your windows. They're going to do nasty things. Yeah. And that's effectively what the result of the show was. Now, on the benefit, look, we did get some good clients as a result of the show, right? We got some people and, they're like, hey, I want to do a really cool project. And you're like, okay, so I was able to get a better clientele, but I still only sat 40 chairs at a time. So it didn't give me any more money from a client perspective. It didn't give me any more money from a sponsor perspective. So the money didn't change. What did change is the hours I had to give away for free. Because remember, every retake we did, Dan paid for the retake. Every overtime hour, billed by my employees, Dan paid. Every time a client said, I was asked by the production crew to come up there, but I can't really afford the tickets, Dan bought the tickets. Every show we had to bring cars to for the TV show, Dan paid for most of those. Not every one of them, but Dan paid for most of those. But those were all the small things, the distractions, and one of my favorites, I won't mention her name, but we had a director that she insisted every single person at FantomWorks grab a broom whenever she was filming because she wanted no noise of any kind. I swear, I wanted to bury her in a shallow grave, right? I mean, you can't shut down a shop because you're filming and not paying. And so just all those things we lost. We were probably losing $10,000, $20,000 a month on that. But the big losses were the clients that figured out very quickly, you are required by the network to deliver my car in September. Dan, I'm sorry, I just don't have the money to finish it by September. So if you want to finish the car, you do anything you want, but I've only got this much money before September. You have no idea how many of my early clients did that to me because they knew we had a schedule. They figured it out and they gamed the system. And just in client extortion, we had one season alone. I think I faced $200,000 in clients refusing to pay their bills because the network said you will deliver it on this date. The client said I can't pay for it in that date. And I was the one stuck in the middle. And once I finished their car, they said, you've already delivered it on TV. I'm not paying any more money. And I was the one stuck holding the bag for hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. And that is what, that literally was enough to just, I was in a depression every day of my life.
There were some days I was pretty worried about you.
There was days I was worried about me.
I can tell you there were several of us who regularly walked around this building praying for you.
I think it worked because it was so bad. But there was a defining moment. We had borrowed $1 million to make payroll. This was, I don't know, this was on year 3 of the show, I think, something like that. We had been borrowing money along the way. I'd been borrowing money from venture capitalists at 10 and 15% when interest rates were 4, you know. And I was fortunate that we had a great relationship with our bank and we got $1 million from them. But the defining moment for me was after borrowing $1 million from one source and probably another 300,000 from other sources, we needed more money. And I went back to the bank and I said, you know, we need another $500,000. It's only a year later. And you know, we submitted the application and the banker called me and I knew the guy. And he called me and he said, Dan, we're not going to approve any more money. And I said, what do you mean you're not going to? I've got a TV show. I've got a business. I've got this. He said, Dan, you're losing money. And if you can't figure out how to make payroll and keep things going without borrowing $1 million at a time and $500,000, we're not getting any deeper. You better figure it out. The loan is denied. And at that point, it was like literally getting somebody taking a baseball bat to my face. And at that point, I realized I had nothing else to do except figure out how to fix it. And so that's when I basically, you've heard the expression, you man up, right? That point, I wrote the network and the production company, and I said, I am not delivering another car ever until it's ready to deliver. And at that point, I basically built my own carrot, and that was, I've got a 6-year contract. I got 3 years left. I got 2 years left. I got 1 year left, and that's why the letter was ready to go on the day that we finished the 6-year contract. Yeah.
I remember that ending phase because I came back to film the final delivery.
Yeah, I forgot about that detail. That's right.
And to help you write the final closing monologue.
I wanted to leave the show. I didn't want to leave FantomWorks. And I figured we better write it in a way that people don't think it's all over. It's just the show that's over.
Some of what's different now that, you know, the 2 people running the show now were people on the floor in the first show. So we had a really different idea of, one, your brain and how this shop works, and a lot more of the what it's like to work in a working shop versus a film studio, and how to be more efficient, because none of us like people sitting around. If somebody's sitting around with no work to do, it drives both you and I insane.
Doesn't it?
And there was certainly a point in the first show where, you know, for me as somebody here on the floor in different roles, from sound to producer to director in different periods of time in the show, there was always a pressure, because we had nothing for our crew to do but film, for them to be filming, because they couldn't edit here. They didn't have any other tasks.
Yeah.
So even if we had nothing to film, we were pushing to fill timelines.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always the most efficient use of time. And there were chokes in post, just like right now. We have chokes in post because we have jumped around on our first episode because cars haven't delivered. The difference now is there's not a network saying you have to deliver an episode. So we reshuffle and we're ahead of the game on editing in 2 months.
Yeah.
But we have our people working 100% of the time when they're here because our server's in the building and our people are editing when they're not shooting.
What we're doing now is what we should have done starting in 2011. We should have been doing exactly what we're doing now.
I think we've both done a lot of thinking since then.
Yeah, but I think the difference is we have it isn't just the thinking. It's the agreeing and the understanding.
So it's a different world. So let's go back in time. So now the show is over.
Yeah.
FantomWorks is starting to write, but you've often called FantomWorks a successful failure. What does that mean for FantomWorks?
All right. So as a company, and it's an interesting thing to deal with, and you're going to have to deal with it in your company at one point. But almost the day you start a company, you better have an exit strategy. And look, I don't mean, you're trying to figure out what day you're going to quit. What I mean by that is, do you agree you're not going to live forever?
Yes.
Would you, however, like the company you're creating to go on?
Yes.
Okay. And that's how that's the plan you got to come up with, right? That unless you want the company to either die with you or die before you, you better figure out a succession plan, an exit strategy. And so I tried unsuccessfully to hire, I don't know, I probably hired 4 or 5 people that all came on board and said, I can run this company. And my favorite, I won't mention any names, but he comes here and, we agree that he's going to work for 1 week and sort of get an assessment of the company. And so he shows up Monday morning at 7:30, half an hour before the dinner bell goes off. And he shows up in a white button-up office shirt and a pair of slacks. And I looked at him and I said, I'm confused. Why are you dressed like that? And he goes, because I'm going to figure out how to run the company. I said, if you do, your clothes will be destroyed on the first day. I'm highly suggesting you go get a pair of work pants on or blue jeans and a T-shirt. Really? And at that point, I knew we were in trouble, right? The red flags had already gone up. After being on the floor for 8 hours, and he said, and you have to remember, I'm going back now 10 years, so the money was different. He said, if you think I'm going to run this place starting at only $100,000 a year and deal with all of these complexities, and that's when he used some explicatives to me. And he said, I'm out of here. So instead of the 5 days to see what's going on, it lasted an entire 8 hours, at which point he walked out. And I mean, I agreed to start him at $100,000 a year, meaning that I was going to have to borrow money to pay him.
It'd be nice if either of us ever made $100,000 in a year. That's not what you get when you run a company.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that you print money when you own your own company. And I don't think even Melissa and I together, I don't know if we've ever made $100,000 together in this company.
But you also own some cool cars and some cool toys.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It's an interesting dilemma because if you have a nice car, whether it's a 67 Camaro or whatever it is, and people say, well, you've got to have a lot of money if you own an old car. And the reality is I spend a lot of my time building cars. And are you familiar with the term excess capacity? Basically an empty seat on an airplane. Mm-hmm. An empty seat on an airplane costs almost as much to send from New York to California as a full seat on an airplane. And so a car in here, if I find an old car on Craigslist for $800, which is exactly what I've done, and then I spend some of my time building on it and working on it, and then if I have a guy who, instead of sweeping the floor because he's waiting for parts, I have him spend an hour or 2 or 3 hours working on the car, to me, that's just managing business, not necessarily spending money. Here's the irony. I don't have the money to pay anyone to do what I do for them. Actually, I couldn't possibly afford to pay a company to build me a car. I don't have that money. But because I can build the car with my time, and because I can take a man or a woman who's trying to learn a process, who needs to learn how to do body work, and I can say, I'm not going to put them on a client car because I don't think it's fair for them to learn basic skills on a client car. But if I find this $800 Craigslist car and I say, do some body work on it. And so here's the only downside about the cars that, I own, and I own a few old cars. If you look at some of the things real carefully, you'll say, those aren't really quite as nice as the cars you build for others. And they're not, because mostly they're built using trainee time, using leftover time, using my time when I can find a few minutes. So it's a funny thing. It's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. I can have a few old cars, but if you look at my house, I bought my house with 2% down. I financed it. I don't take vacations, and the last time I did, it was $800 per person for a week. That's the vacation I took, and I think it was 4 years ago. So it's an interesting thing. They think if you have a shop and you employ people, there's lots of money, and there both is and there isn't. Almost all of my money, like to pay my bills and do things, my wife and I are both retired, military officers. We invest and have stock portfolios and mutual funds and 401ks. And then, of course, I've made most of my money off real estate by effectively flipping houses. I'm the guy out there, cleaning out crappers and putting in new toilets and plumbing houses and wiring houses. And that's how I've made most of my money. Almost nothing has been from paychecks from FantomWorks. So yeah, there's cool stuff here, but there's no money as a result of it.
It's a passion project.
It is, yeah.
All right, so successful failure because you have no exit strategy.
Right, I have nothing. Basically, the company, I don't know what's going to happen to it. I'm still working on it, but I don't have a plan.
Well, how do you fix the failure? I mean, and there's things that have happened in the last few years, both post-show and in the world, between politics and COVID and supply chains. Where do you go from here?
All right, so I'm going to try and give this as succinctly, because this is a 7-hour dissertation turned into hopefully about 2 minutes. When COVID came out, it was both a horrible thing and a great thing at the same time.
Of course, it was a horrible thing because people did legitimately get sick and die. I think we all know people who suffered from COVID, but there were ramifications beyond the actual sickness.
I knew that it was going to be an economic disaster. I knew that it was going to be a freedom disaster. I knew that it was going to be a government overreach disaster. I knew that all these bad things were going to happen. But the good thing was, even a flower can sprout from a cow pie, And so I saw that as my opportunity to move out of the city and become sort of an off-grid living guy. And when I did it, people started asking me lots of questions. And I realized that there were maybe even more people interested in how do you become self-reliant than how do you build cars. It was I received just everybody every day. What about this? How do you do that? How do you get an energy source? What do you mean a backup water supply? And so all of these questions started coming in. And then I realized that taking my knowledge of creating a company, taking my understanding of dealing with cities and zoning and everything else, maybe this was an opportunity to create a new company that allowed FantomWorks to operate at some point almost as a hobby, to where if I did turn it over to someone, they don't have to worry about it making a ton of money or even making money at all. They can just pursue their passions, because maybe there's a way to actually make money helping people learn how to be independent and use that as sort of a prop or a crutch to keep FantomWorks going. So that is that became sort of my exit strategy. That what if Easy Homesteading, the new company, could make enough money that it's a little bit like you having kids. You didn't have kids to make money. But if you can do something and sort of offset the cost of having kids, you get to have your baby and
not go into debt to do it.
Right. And not go into debt. Yeah.
And really, it's the starting of the new company that got me interested in doing a show with you, because I love the concept of restoring cars and not throwing things away. But I'm not a car nut. I am a self-sufficiency nut. And I love, like, I've had chicken since I was 10 because I hate throwing food away.
Isn't that great on you? I think back to how much people scrape off of a plate into a trash can. And I got to tell you, I don't want to eat it because I'm full, but I also don't want to see it thrown away. And there had to be a fix for that. And amazingly, a chicken is a heck of a fix for that, isn't it?
Even in the city, because I'm still in the city, but our chickens recycle all our food. When people come over and start to throw food in the trash, I yell at them. Like, there's a chicken bowl. You do not throw food away.
I always wanted to yell at people for throwing things away, but I couldn't have a good justification for it because I didn't have a chicken or a pig or a goat or a cow. But now that I've got dogs and cats and turkeys and pigs and chickens and ducks, I can yell at all the people I want. My animals can eat everything. And I learned about a pig bowl. You know what a pig bowl is? After you've scraped your plate, after you've taken everything off the fork and the knife and everything else, what's left over in somebody's wine glass, in their glass of milk, everything goes into a bowl. And now we take this 2-gallon silver mixing bowl and it goes under the faucet. And so as we're even rinsing the plate, it goes into this silver bowl. The milk, the tomato juice, the leftover 3 ounces of wine, it all goes into a bowl and the pigs go nuts for it.
And I think as our economy is doing all of the things it's doing for a variety of reasons, people are realizing a little bit more what a disposable society we've started to live in and how important it is that we really conserve our resources.
This is almost too big a subject to broach, but I'm going to use something as simple as mowing my yard. That, I've got 6.5 acres. And so I would mow my yard, and quite honestly, you're generating, I don't know, I'd have to take a guess, probably 500 pounds of grass clippings in 6.5 acres of yard. Well, that grass clipping is just organic product. An organic product can be used for many things. It can be turned into mulch as a fertilizer. It can feed cows. It can become milk. It can feed... Do you have any idea what a pig will do with a piece of grass? Not only will they eat the top of it, they'll go take the root of it out, which is why you have to sort of make sure pigs sort of move around your yard, right? You don't want to let a pig hit one area too much. So it was a matter of the food, water. We have a well now. And that was, partially driven because I wanted a place without city water, but partially because, do you have any idea how much better a good well water source tastes than city chlorinated, fluoridated water?
It's pretty extreme. I grew up on a well, and then when I went to college and couldn't drink well water anymore, I got sick. Same as eating chicken, eggs from the cafeteria instead of eggs from the backyard. They literally would make me throw up.
Well, take an egg coming out of your chicken that you feed worms and bugs and grubs and corn table scraps, and take an egg that comes from a grocery store and break them on the same plate side by side. First thing you're going to notice is that they don't look the same and they're not shaped the same. The yolk in a farm-raised egg will be like half a bowl still standing up, while the yolk from a store egg will lay flat like it's a frisbee. So they look different. They're different colors, and the taste is quite different. So it isn't just about recycling, which to me is critically important, right? Ashley, we throw nothing away now. I mean, I recycle aluminum and melt aluminum down into ingots. We recycle our food. We recycle our paper. We literally recycle everything, just like we're recycling cars. And so the recycling is a big part of it, right? But the other part of it is there's a magic about growing your own tomato. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not only you can't even compare the taste. A store-bought tomato tastes like an orange rubber ball. You know, you have to look at it to figure out what it is you're eating, and a homegrown tomato tastes better. But there is truly a magic about having a plant, and the interesting thing is you can do it right on the counter in your apartment building, living in a city. You can grow tomatoes and potatoes and carrots inside a fairly small place. I'm not going to say it doesn't take up any space, but it doesn't take up a lot of space. And when you taste your own tomato on your own sandwich, I don't know, to me, and again, I don't want to get too sort of emotional or too, but you remember the day you saw your first baby? Mm-hmm. That wet little lizard yeah. person was handed to you? But was it not the most beautiful yep. thing you'd ever seen in your life? And yet, let's face it, all little babies look like lizard babies, right? And quite honestly, raising your own tomatoes, producing your own food, when I watch baby pigs being born, when I see chickens come out of eggs and then grow to produce more eggs and then more chickens, that's just, there's a magic to it that is hard to describe. But it not only is a way of sort of giving back, right? I'm no longer trying to compete for $8 a dozen eggs at the grocery store. I'm actually helping out because I'm able to hand out eggs to other people where $8 for a dozen eggs is a pretty big deal now. You know what I mean? Like, 2 years ago, they were a buck and a half a dozen. And I know my wholesale cost on eggs, you know, because I belong to a wholesale restaurant depot. And I monitor the price of, mm-hmm. you know, the commodities. Eggs in a 90-day period had a 400% increase in price. And that hasn't slowed down. It's kept going from there. I think we're up to about 500 or 600% now.
I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much of kind of where all this is going, but a lot of those reasons and kind of the plans that you have for this company are why I was so excited to start a show again and do all the companion stuff that goes along with it. Because I do really believe that, you know, what we're doing to make this and increase this education and do all the big picture stuff that people are going to learn about as they watch what we're doing could actually save lives one day, not just make them a little bit better.
Right. So the facet of it to like eat better and get away from chlorinated water and have pesticide-free food, that's all very important. But what about the fact that if something happens, a disaster, you have a hurricane come through. Look, if you've relied on the grocery store and on the faucet and on the power grid to bring in everything, and when it all goes out, you're, you know, up the creek without a paddle, then I think you've sold yourself short. And more importantly, Ashley, if you choose to make bad decisions and you go hungry and you don't have water, that's your problem. But what about your kids?
They're my responsibility.
Absolutely, right? And so I can now look at kids, my grandchildren, and know that if these bad things happen, whether it's a hurricane, a massive virus, civil unrest, whatever, that I don't really have to worry about how I'm going to get water, how I'm going to get food, how I'm going to get power, how I'm going to stay alive, and how my family's going to stay alive. We've taken care of that. If your house was completely paid for, would you keep insurance on it?
Probably.
Yeah, I do. I've got a house that's paid for and I keep insurance on it. And it's because just in case, right? Mm-hmm. But let me ask you, if you keep coverage on a house and 10 years later it hasn't burnt to the ground, is the insurance company going to give you your money back?
Nope.
So in my opinion, insurance has the potential to be a big waste of money. If you don't have a problem, you lose your money. But let me tell you, if you have eggs because you have chickens and a disaster doesn't happen, Have you wasted your money?
No, because you're eating good eggs.
You're eating better.
Yep.
You've got not only this insurance policy, but you've got an insurance policy that actually pays you even if nothing bad happens. And then if something does happen, are those chickens potentially either a source of protein because there's eggs, or if you had to, a source of protein because you've got meat?
Exactly. They're both.
So to me, if you're willing to understand the logic of buying insurance to sort of lower your stress and lower your risk, then why wouldn't you prepare for things that are happening around the globe that you actually benefit from, right? So to me, this isn't, look, I'm never going to go try and live in a cave with a rebel flag and a machine gun. That's not what this is about.
No, I've been to your house. That's not what this is about.
Yeah. You've seen my place. My cows, I think they're happy cows. My pigs frolic around in the sun and do stupid things, right? My chickens, I just sit out some days and just watch my chickens because they are like little circus clowns. And so I have these things and they're leading a good life. And if anything really bad happens, I've got a source of milk, of eggs, and if needed, of protein from all of these. So to me, it's logical. And that's why I really called you, was I figure if we could get people to understand more about cars and the truth and the reality of it. No, you can't restore a car for 40 grand. Yes, it does really take sometimes 10 hours to do this thing that in the end you have to decide, was it worth 10 hours, right? A lot of decisions. But in the end, I built cars because it's recycling and I'm trying to show people how to do that. But what about recycling something far more important? Are you aware that the United States consumes 25% of the world's natural resources, and I think there's a number, 40% of waste. Our waste is higher by far than any other country in the world.
I believe it.
It's tragic. It's so bad, right? And so if we could, and here's the irony. You know, this whole Green New Deal thing, right? So there's this belief that if we pay the government more money, that they're going to change the temperature of the air. Ashley, I don't know, but I don't believe that. No. But here's what I do believe. I believe if we don't throw away 1 million pounds of food or 10 million pounds of food a day, that those 10 million pounds of food could go to feeding cows and chickens and pigs and turkeys and goats. I believe that if we don't throw away paper cups, paper bags, plastic bags, all of these other things, that our landfills will be a lot less full and these products can be reused over and over again. So while I don't fall into the, I'm gonna give you money to make the sun stop doing what it's doing, I do believe that there are ways that we can, in fact, conserve so many of our resources and use it for so much good, and yet it's simple. Right? I mean, how hard was it for you to make a decision to hand that plate of leftover food to a chicken?
It's just automatic now, and it's really not something that you're sacrificing anything for because the food was just going to get thrown away.
That's right. It's logical, and again, I don't want to get too emotional, but I got to tell you, I can't tell you how good it makes me feel to hand garbage, which isn't really garbage, to a chicken or a goat and have them absolutely, it's like watching a kid on Christmas morning. Let me tell you, I gave my goats some leftover watermelon. If there was ever the look of joy in a goat's face that you've ever seen in your life, it's when these goats, and it was mostly the rind, the goats ate it like they were eating the most delicious thing they had ever received in their entire lives. And they were just like going nuts over it. And it's a joyful experience to watch garbage, which isn't garbage at all, being turned into joy. And it's almost like love, So that's why I'm doing it. That's why I asked you to come along on this adventure. And so now we just got to make it work, because
Right.
we're both right now facing some challenges.
Right. So, and I think we need to address what's different from some of those stresses of all of those things that were in the first run of this versus what we're doing now, and why we hope that this is going to be different. And I think, some of those come down to like the sponsorships, and where does, the carrot like go. And we were very careful writing a contract of how this works, even if it does get sold to a network, what will happen to make sure that we've got a pre-existing document signed so that some of the same things can't repeat. But now sponsorship, we can do what we want to put companies that we want to promote and their sponsorships as it's appropriate. And then the money goes to this company. It doesn't go to the ether.
Yeah. So the challenge, of course, is, and I have to quote sort of a sequence from Mad Men to sort of illustrate it. The group of Don Draper and Sterling Cooper lost their largest contract. And it was with Philip Morris, which was like, I don't know, 60, 70% of their billing. And as soon as Philip Morris pulled their contract, about the next 20 or 30% of their clients said, we think you're going to go under and we don't want to stay with you. So they all abandoned ship. And the crazy part was, and I see this, as they're trying to rebuild their company from losing all these people, everyone is saying, well, if you're still alive in 6 months, we'll work with you. Well, I'm not going to be alive in 6 months if you all quit. And so right now we've got some companies who they benefited in some cases very greatly from the show before, and they know the success of the TV show. I mean, we're in 70 countries still to this day. Are you aware that we are the highest effectively rerun car show ever in history? We're the highest awarded car show in history.
And every episode when it aired was watched on the premiere day by at least 8 million people.
Oh, the numbers were crazy.
Numbers.
Yeah. 12 years ago, mid-range reality was $650,000 an hour. They were talking like if it was a CBS, a lot of these shows running $1 million an hour.
Yeah, some of those, like Survivor, some of those ones are in absolutely through the roof.
$1 million an hour. So we're attempting to get this off the ground. You figure we were, when FantomWorks kicked off, that was a budget ultimately of $250,000 an hour. We're trying to do it at under $100,000 an hour. And of course, 10 years later, things haven't gotten cheaper, right?
No. And we have a lot of people who have buy-in on our company's end as the production company doing this, who are taking lower rates and doing, now Bridgette and I are right there with you from some days we get in here at 4 a.m. and we don't leave till 7 o'clock at night. So there's much more of we're in this together and working on making that happen so that we can keep those numbers to somewhere that can have a shot to get started.
We've already been successful. We're still doing a lot of the same things. We're still building cars. We're still conserving resources and repurposing these old things. We're just now doing it in a more broad perspective. We've already proven we're successful. We really need them to sign up and now say, I believe, and here I'm going to support it, because, I've thrown a fair amount of money at this. You've thrown a lot of money, and when it comes to blood, sweat, and tears,
we're all there.
That's a full-time job, right? So what we now need is for some more people to come along and say, all right, you've done it once before. I know you're going to do it again, and here's the support.
So it's a whole different ballgame now because we've built a community, right? There's a huge FantomWorks community of people who have watched the show, been to the shop, are part of this journey with us. If people out there are wanting to support what we're doing, here's the lowest threshold. On YouTube, click subscribe, click the notification bell so you see when we're live and when we release new videos, and tell your friends that this exists. Let them know what we're doing. The next thing is to actually subscribe through our network, CMAX. So if you subscribe to watch this show commercial-free and get extras like when we start doing live call-in shows, subscribe through phantomworks.cmax.tv. There's going to be more behind-the-scenes footage on CMAX, our platform. So if you subscribe through phantomworks.cmax.tv, it actually supports the production with your subscription. And we actually do run a whole streaming platform, so you'll be able to see commercial-free a whole lot more content, movies and shows and all that good stuff on there. And the third thing is, Dan and I have talked a lot about homesteading and some of these ways to conserve and reuse. That's the whole point of starting Easy Homesteading. Well, there is a website, easyhomesteading.com. So check it out, see if there's stuff there that you need. If you're in Hampton Roads, come to the store and see the Off-Grid store in person. And if you just want a FantomWorks t-shirt, go to fantomworks.com/store. All of those things help to keep this moving. And the final thing is, if you have a company and would like to partner with us more, we want to put your stuff in as branded content on FantomWorks Off-Grid in an organic way that helps both companies to do better. So these are the ways that you can be a part of the FantomWorks community. When people say they love what we're doing, this is how you can see more of it happen and help us get past that 6-month part where it's, do you sink or swim? We want to swim with you.
Let people have a little piece of the pie in some way.
I gotta say, the last live stream we did just yesterday, the comments were very affirming of people loving what we're doing. And we haven't even released shows yet because we only delivered the last car for the first episode 3 days ago. So there hasn't been a full episode released yet, but people still love just getting to see a little bit more of the depth. It's been good actually getting to go down a little bit of memory lane with you.
Yeah, some of them good.
Yep. Memory lane is a mix, but I'm glad we're here and moving forward and actually working with people to teach them about not just cars, but all these different self-sufficiency things.
Yeah.
And it's fun getting to interact more directly with viewers. Like, you know, when we do live streams, I'm the person with the computer responding to some of the comments.
Yeah.
So it's cool to have that more direct connection and the faster turnaround we have where, you know, projects we're working on, you're not going to wait 2 years to see. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think the process refinement that you've done here, and the relationship that we have is just going to work much better. And in the end, I figure if like, I'm not one of these that says if we can make a change in one person's life, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll take that, but I want to make a change in 10 million people's lives. I want people to understand that they can have their own food from their own hands. They can be more self-reliant and have a better feeling of going to bed at night knowing that they're taking care of themselves. And if, God forbid, a disaster hits, that they're going to have a way to take care of themselves and their family, their children. So if we can do that, then I will consider my life effectively complete.
So for everybody watching at home, hopefully you've learned a little bit more about this journey and how you can be a deeper part of the FantomWorks and CMAX community. Join us for the ride.